Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Friday, August 12th, 2022, and today we are going to be talking about the generic congressional ballot. Now, just over a week ago, the Democratic Party officially took the lead for the first time in 9 consecutive months on the 538 generic ballot. On the Real Clear Politics one, the Democratic Party still hasn't overcame the GOP, but the lead for the Republican Party has been less than a quarter of a percentage point for quite some time now, over the past couple of days. And looking at this lead that the Democratic Party now has of 0.3% nationwide, at least somewhat indicates that as of right now, it doesn't look like the generic ballot is on track to deviate much from where it is now, especially heading into November. Now, I've already said a week ago that I expect the Republican Party to rebound nationally speaking. I think the Dobbs decision was most impactful back in June, but honestly, we haven't seen much data to reveal that the Dobbs decision is wearing off to the extent that the Republican Party needs it to wear off. This generic ballot lead comes after practically weeks of railing the GOP on the issue of abortion and really bringing back up this very important part of American politics where voters are now enthusiastic to vote about a single issue, and that drives them into the midterms. In 2020, voters were angry because of President Trump and because of COVID-19. In 2018, they were putting forward their dislike for President Trump in the White House by voting in those midterm elections. Now, that's not to say voters out there aren't going to be disliking Biden, but there also is one major issue, that issue of abortion, which never had to be voted on, practically speaking, in the midterms for the past 49 years. Because of Roe versus Wade, the Supreme Court had protected a woman's right to choose, and because that was overturned in June, voters now have to face this possibility that whoever they vote for will have an impact on the issue of abortion access across the United States. This generic ballot lead expands to 0.3, which isn't super impressive by any means. I think that the Democratic Party, if they were looking for an impressive result, would be well above 0.3%. But the Democratic Party is still leading and has led for over a week now, and it comes as a result of a bunch of new data coming out nationwide that shows the steady decrease in Republican support across this country. Now, Fox News released a poll just yesterday talking about the race for Congress tightening, and that's exactly what happened in this poll. Fox News is an A-rated pollster, and they aren't perfectly accurate, but I generally trust what they put out in terms of their election polls. They tracked the numbers in terms of congressional vote preference from May 2022, June, July, and now, and you can see that the Democratic Party support has gone down from June, but up from their tracker in May, and the Republican Party support has decreased from May, June, and July. The Democrats and the Republicans now tied nationally, in which this poll indicates that about 18% of the electorate is undecided. Now, I don't believe that. I don't think 41 to 41 makes a lot of sense. I think you're more so thinking it's 45, 46, 46, 45, depending on which side of the aisle you believe is ahead. But ultimately, this is a tied poll, and I do think that there are less undecideds than this poll might be letting on. But at the end of the day, the congressional vote preference definitely has changed. And you can see it. From May to June, the Republican Party's lead did go down, and then from June to July, it stayed the same lead, but did narrow down in terms of the percentage of voters willing to back either candidates, and now that number has definitely decreased for the GOP. At best, for the Democratic Party, this is something that shows that they are within striking distance of winning the national popular vote. Realistically speaking, the generic ballot is probably underestimating Republican support even slightly, which means that a 0.3% lead is not enough for Democrats to be confident that they would win the national popular vote if the election was held today. But I will say they've definitely gotten a lot closer than where they were months ago, when Republicans were up in some of the polls even at different points, ahead by 4 points nationwide, depending on the time frame. They were up by pretty significant amounts across the nation. These leads are ones that probably were even higher than what we actually saw. These 4-point leads were probably, better points for the Republican Party than we thought, simply because we don't get the actual results for the election. Looking at the polls, they have pretty consistently underestimated the Republican Party, and it is something that we do need to recognize. But it comes to a point where if the numbers get better for the Democratic Party, then this narrow lead on 538 and losing by 0.1 on Real Clear Politics, if it gets better than this, well, the Democratic Party very well could use that to their advantage and could use that and end up winning the generic vote this November. The Democratic Party won the popular vote, might I add, in 2016 while losing the House, losing the presidential election, and losing the Senate. So things of that nature have happened. But typically speaking, the House vote is a better indicator of what happens in the House. In 2016, Democrats lost the House vote. they lost the House. In 2018, they won the House vote, won the House. In 2020, they won the House vote, won the House, right? And, looking at the margins of victory for the Democratic Party, sure, the GOP only needed to win in 2016 by 1 and maintained a majority larger than what the Democratic Party was able to get in 2018 when they won the generic ballot by 7, but that has to do with redistricting, with gerrymandering and the way that our maps are positioned. But in terms of an overall indicator as to who wins the general election, it's pretty accurate. So I would say right now, what we are seeing here is pretty much a Dobbs effect that is continuing, at least for right now. The Democratic Party and the Republican Party are in a very narrow position, and the Democrats are the ones that benefit from it. Because looking at our national forecast, the Democratic Party is practically doomed to lose the House. But the fact is, the Democratic Party's chances at retaining control have risen over the past couple of weeks. When a low point of 12% in terms of a chance has risen to 20%, I'd rather take, 1 in 5 than 1 in 7. But the Senate is really where you are seeing a super significant change from the beginning of this forecast until now. From when the June poll showed the Republicans ahead by 3 points and the May poll showed the Republicans ahead by 7 points nationwide, why a tie now is so good for the Democratic Party, at least from what they were expecting. Because the numbers in the beginning of June, right around that time that May poll was released, the Republican Party had a 60% chance at victory in the U.S. Senate. It seemed like it was on track to increase from that point, might I add. In fact, Republicans were not only expected to, do well with a 60% chance, but they were expected to pick up a seat to make it 51 to 49, which reasonably could have gone to 52 to 48 in another type of wave. Because right now, with the Democratic Party at a 60% chance and the GOP at 40%, it's like the numbers have flipped for either political party. We might still be able to see a Republican victory, but seeing it beyond 51 has become increasingly more unlikely, which means the Senate majority, if that for the Republican Party, will be as slim as the Democratic Party's is today. Looking at our Senate map here, we also see this happening. The reason why the numbers are being driven to the left in the forecast, Pennsylvania, Georgia, looking at Arizona, looking at Nevada. These are states that the Republican Party should have had locked down months ago, should have had top-tier candidates for, and I'm sure they did. Doug Ducey in Arizona, Doug Collins in Georgia. When you see even Sean Parnell convincing him to stay in that Senate race in the state of Pennsylvania, or honestly somebody else, right? Just not Dr. Oz. I think Adam Laxalt's the one exception to this case, but I'm sure there could have been a stronger Republican. But the point is that in these midterms, in these Senate elections, the Republican Party and the Democratic Party have definitely moved in different directions in terms of candidate quality and in terms of political stance, that some of these GOP candidates are more extreme than the Democratic candidates are on their side of the aisle. And voters don't seem to be liking that. And it also seems to be weighing down the GOP nationally. Now, beyond the forecast and beyond the generic ballot, there is something too that I think might be driving this lead for the Democratic Party nationwide. And it's the approval rating of President Joe Biden. Over the past couple of days, we have seen it increase from a low point of 37.5 on Real Clear Politics. On FiveThirtyEight. I believe Real Clear Politics has a different number in terms of the overall average. But from a low point on their numbers of being down at just 36.8%, has jumped up to 40% across both of these organizations. Now, 40% is not good for President Biden. To be any president down 15 points nationwide means you're practically doomed for your reelection bid. But there is no guarantee of that either, because presidents don't always lose just because they're unpopular. Looking at President Biden's approval rating, being down 15 points is better from where the Democrats were down 20 points a week ago, right? To see the Democratic Party in a consistent downward trend to now rebound in the highest way it has in a while, which honestly speaking isn't saying much, but it is saying at least something. President Biden's approval rating is 4 points higher from where it was a few days ago or a week ago, and that's good for the Democratic Party. Because if this trend is consistent and does continue to increase, well, you start to see the generic ballot increase for the Democratic Party as well. I don't think it's a coincidence that in President Biden's past 3 weeks of practically, the entirety of his disapproved presidency, meaning this time in August onward, I think, you have seen very good things happen for President Biden, and I don't expect his approval rating to fully rebound. At the end of the day, inflation is at an all-time high. What you're finding is that, or I guess not really, but still a very, very, very high. What you also have is a recession that is expected to be underway or is by some being indicated as already underway. President Biden probably hasn't seen the worst in his approval rating, but that doesn't mean that the Democratic Party is doomed to lose in 2022. And it also means that as of right now, if he is rebounding, even narrowly, it is helping the Democratic Party, maybe even marginally. Joe Biden's approval rating at 40%, I would say, is not one that I would celebrate if I was a Democrat, but what I would celebrate is the generic ballot lead. And I think that, again, they increase together. We've talked about this very consistent drop-off that you seem to see between President Biden's approval rating and generic ballot support for the GOP. At different points, it was 10 points. At bad points, it was 20. And now you're starting to see it be about 15 points. But that drop-off is tugging up the generic ballot lead for the Democratic Party and bringing it to a point where now you're a week of a consistent lead. 0.1, then 0.2, now 0.3. What's next? And taking a look at a lot of the data that we have seen thus far, practically every single poll, with very few exceptions, have had the Democratic Party ahead. YouGov The Economist, Democrat plus 6. Beacon Research, Shaw and Company, Fox News, even. The Bullfinch Group, Democrat plus 1, Democrat plus 2. Morning Consult Politico, Democrat plus 1. The Canadian Press, Democrat plus 4. Rasmussen reports, this is the two oddballs here, Rasmussen reports in Data for Progress, Republican plus 3, Republican plus 4. But Ipsos Reuters, Democrat plus 2. And then another poll from YouGov and The Economist that was taken in July, showing the Democratic Party with a 5-point lead. So what I see happening here is a pretty consistent lead for the GOP, for the Democratic Party when it comes down to the generic ballot, and that there are very few pollsters actually showing the Republican Party ahead. But it is still weighing down the average because a lot of these pollsters are still reputable, and they do take precedence, I would say, over some of these lesser-known polling companies. In addition to that, some of these are repeats, such as YouGov, The Economist, who did a poll just a week ago that is releasing another one now. But I also think that there is, something to look into when it comes down to who is taking the leads, who is overall in the advantage, and what is happening between our nationwide opposing political parties. So as we head into November, we should expect the Senate odds for the Democratic Party and the House odds to get slightly better as the generic ballot gets better. I told you already what my thoughts are on the GOP rebounding. I think it does happen, but if it doesn't, it will be very bad for the Republican Party. Now, that's not an official prediction. I'm not predicting that, by November, Republicans will be up by 3, even though that's probably where I expect them to be, because this generic ballot has proven us wrong multiple times. I mean, never have we seen this happen. I mean, yes, in 2014, we did see the Democratic Party ahead, 8 years ago today. But the difference is that for the Republican Party to be ahead by 9 consistent months is quite unheard of. To see the Republican Party ahead by some points, 3 points nationwide, or at different points, depending on the pollster, 4 to 5 points nationwide, you don't expect the Democratic Party to rebound less than 3 months before the election. Because, honestly, there is no real reason to expect that besides the Dobbs decision. And for all of those Republicans out there that argue that the Dobbs decision isn't there or isn't going to last, they may very well be proven wrong. I think the Nebraska special election showed it. I think the Kansas referendum showed it. I think the Minnesota special election showed it. And now the generic ballot numbers seem to be indicating it, and President Biden's approval rating is narrowly increasing. It's telling you that the country is slightly shifting. We never argued that a Dobbs decision would make an impact of, 30 points nationwide, 20 points, even though, the majority of the nation, 60 to 40, approves of a woman's right to choose. That doesn't mean that 60 to 40 of the time, Democrats are going to win simply because Roe v. Wade was overturned. But there are going to be voters out there that are going to say, I might have voted for the GOP, but I don't trust their issue on, I don't trust their stance on the issue of an abortion. For those that believe in no exceptions whatsoever, whether it's the Michigan Attorney General GOP candidate or the Michigan Governor candidate or the Arizona Governor or, even some Senate and House candidates. The stances that these politicians take have impacts, and they might not have 4 or 5 years ago or even 1-2 years ago when Roe v. Wade wasn't under siege. When Roe v. Wade was overturned, that's when all of these pro-life stances and anti-abortion rhetoric stances have taken hold and have actually had a significant impact. Because now state legislatures are banning it, referendums are being put on the ballot, and attorney generals across states are just implementing older laws banning abortion to the fullest extent in some states, and voters aren't exactly thrilled about that. To deny that there is any impact of the Dobbs decision is completely wrong, and just taking a look at the question of the most important issue to voters, inflation, obviously a very big one, 41%, but the issue of abortion has jumped up from 10 to 14%, making it the second most important issue to voters across the country, outpacing guns. So to have 14% of the country care about this as their second most important issue, or I guess the second most important issue to voters across the country, shows that there is something here. And the lead narrowing down from June to now because of this Dobbs decision, I think is very telling as to what we might be able to expect this November. So we'll see what happens as the months go on, if the Democratic Party, the Republican Party do end up changing from where they are right now. But honestly speaking, the Democratic Party is benefiting from the Dobbs decision, and they're using it to try to, expand or at least maintain Senate and House control and win numerous seats, statewide, locally, etc. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a playlist for you to go ahead and watch. And again, just honestly, thank you guys so much for watching. I'm trying to release an election night video sometime in the near future. I move into college in just a couple of days, so there is a bit of trouble there. I'm going to go ahead and try to update you guys on what things are going to look like then, but I will have to wait and see what happens. So again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I look forward to making videos for you guys for a while. I think that, we'll talk about what happens when school comes around, but it's probably going to be no different than where it was last year. Again, thank you guys.